All right, welcome to another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at D&D table rules.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at a section that I found from what seems to be a handbook for dungeon masters.
Right.
And, I was thinking, even if you aren't into D&D,
Right.
I think a lot of these concepts, and we'll kind of talk about this as we go through, can really apply to any sort of group activity.
Absolutely.
So whether it's, you have a book club or a board game night,
Yeah.
or even, a project at work,
Yeah.
just kind of like setting the stage for something to be really enjoyable and memorable and run smoothly.
Yeah, I love how this section really emphasizes setting those ground rules for a smooth experience.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights this often overlooked importance of communication and just like shared expectations.
Yeah.
If you think of it like building a house,
Yeah.
you can't start with the fancy stuff.
Yeah.
You have to have that strong foundation.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that foundation.
Okay.
So starting with respect. I mean, that's kind of like the bedrock here. It is. And, they talk about a lot of just basic courtesy, which we'll get into. But one of the things that really stood out to me was, avoiding these epic shouting matches over rules interpretation.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
Dice are rolling. Tensions are high.
Yeah, and everybody suddenly becomes like a rules lawyer.
Everybody's got an opinion, and that's, I think, where that baseline of respect comes in.
Right,
It creates that, what psychologists call psychological safety, that feeling of trust and comfort, where people can just be themselves and take risks and, really contribute their ideas without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Which is so important, whether you're, brainstorming a new campaign at work
Right.
or you're navigating a treacherous dungeon.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned psychological safety because I remember this one game, it was years ago, and we were in the middle of this really intense encounter, and things got a little bit heated over a disputed dice roll.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
And, it was just one of those moments where everybody's like, no, it's this, no, it's that. And we kind of like took a step back and started laughing about it, and I think because we had that foundation of respect, we were able to just kind of like move on without any hard feelings, and it actually became like this running joke.
That's a great example of how respect can actually enhance the game.
Yeah.
It's not about stifling debate. It's about creating a space for those discussions to happen respectfully and constructively.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what allows you to like kind of have those disagreements but still like have fun and be friends at the end of it.
Exactly.
So we've got respect.
Okay.
But now let's talk about distractions.
Okay.
Because one thing that the handbook talks a lot about is, minimizing those distractions to really get immersed in the game world.
Right.
So, phones on silent.
Laptops closed.
Yeah, laptops closed. Maybe even a rule of like no side conversations.
Yeah.
Is it just me or is dedicated focus like becoming a superpower these days?
It's a practice.
Yeah.
It's something we have to be very intentional about.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because the handbook draws this parallel to mindfulness practices, eliminating those external stimuli so you can be more present in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where you really start to experience the game on a deeper level.
Yeah, it's like you kind of create this little pocket of focused energy.
A little bubble.
Yeah, and I found that when everybody's on the same page about that, it really does like elevate the whole experience for everybody.
And think about how that translates to other areas of life.
Yeah.
Imagine a work meeting.
Right.
Where everyone is fully present and engaged.
Right.
Or, a family dinner where the phones are off and everyone's connecting.
Yeah.
It's all about those moments of intentionality.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got respect, we've got focus.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that can either fuel the adventure or completely derail it.
What is that?
Food.
Oh, of course, food.
Of course, food. This handbook dedicates like a surprisingly large amount of space to the logistics of eating.
Yeah, it is important.
During the game.
Yeah.
So, are we ordering pizza? Are we like, bringing snacks?
Are we feasting like hobbits?
Yeah, who's bringing the lembas bread?
Right.
And it might seem like a really mundane detail, but I've learned the hard way that if you neglect those things, you end up with some very hangry adventurers.
Hangry adventurers are not fun.
No, they're not.
No, the handbook is right to point that out because those things can really derail the game.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's really just about preempting those potential conflicts.
Right.
So whether that means assigning snack duty
or
setting a budget for takeout,
yeah,
address those logistics up front And you'll save yourself a lot of headaches later.
Right. You don't want your epic quest to be derailed because somebody's suddenly craving Doritos.
Right, exactly.
Okay, and speaking of details that can really impact the immersion, let's talk about character names.
Oh, yes.
So you've got this rich world of elves with names like, Alara and Arathorn.
Beautiful.
And then Bob the Barbarian walks in.
Oh, no.
And it's just like, it kind of breaks the spell a little bit.
It does. It does. And the handbook is really great at pointing out the importance of thematic consistency.
Yeah.
When it comes to names,
Yeah.
creating that sense of place and, belonging to the world.
Right.
Like imagine a gritty noir detective named Sparklepuff.
Sparklepuff,
and
yeah.
It just doesn't work.
Sparklepuff, the hard-boiled detective.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're building this immersive world.
Okay.
But what happens when real life throws a curveball?
Oh, no.
And a player can't make it to the session?
Uh-oh.
So how do we handle those missing adventurers?
So the handbook actually gives some pretty cool options for that. And one is to have another player temporarily take control of that character.
Yeah.
But, only with the original player's permission, of course.
Of course, you don't want somebody coming back from vacation and suddenly their character has, completely changed alignments.
Exactly. Yeah. The handbook stresses the importance of respecting that player agency.
Yeah.
It's their character, their story.
Right.
And another option is for the DM to temporarily take control.
Yeah.
But that can be a lot of extra work for the DM.
Especially if multiple players are missing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine having to juggle 3 or 4 extra characters.
Yeah. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So, and then they also talk about, the option of just leaving the character out of that particular adventure. Or maybe they just kind of fade into the background without any explicit in-game explanation.
Right.
Which, it takes a little bit of suspension of disbelief. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, practicality trumps realism.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to keep the story moving.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, there's the flip side.
Okay.
What about the players who want to run multiple characters?
Oh, interesting.
So, one character is usually the sweet spot for our focus and development. But, are there situations where juggling multiple personas could work?
I think there are.
Yeah.
But you have to manage the complexity.
Right.
And, the handbook highlights the cognitive load.
Yeah.
Of juggling those different personalities and actions.
Yeah, it can be tough to keep track of everything.
It can.
And it can also lead to those kind of awkward moments.
Yeah.
Of self-conversation in character.
Right, like when you're arguing with yourself about whether to loot the treasure chest.
Exactly.
Or, disarm the trap.
Right.
And it breaks the flow.
Yeah, it's not exactly the height of dramatic tension.
No, it's not.
So it sounds like, multiple characters might work if there's a clear narrative reason, maybe there's a mentor-student relationship where it makes sense for those two characters to always be together to help the player kind of manage that role-playing aspect more effectively.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Between player creativity and maintaining that cohesive narrative.
Right.
And that's what's so great about these table rules is that it gives you these guidelines.
Right.
But then it also allows for that flexibility and creativity.
Absolutely. So, okay, so we've covered respect, distractions, food, character names.
Yes.
And even missing players and multiple characters.
Well, you have.
What's next on our deep dive into D&D table rules?
Well, next we'll be tackling a topic that's always a bit of a gray area.
I'm intrigued.
Table talk.
Table talk.
Yeah, that fine line between in-character and out-of-character communication?
Yeah.
So that's where we're headed next.
All right, well, I can't wait to dive into that, so we'll be right back after a quick break.
All right, so we're back, and we're diving into this fascinating topic of table talk. So where's that line between in-character and out-of-character communication?
Yeah, because can a player offer advice if their character's unconscious?
Right.
Or, should they be sharing information that their character wouldn't know?
Right. It's tricky.
It's a tricky one, yeah. And I think it's something that's worth discussing.
Yeah, definitely.
As a group before the game even starts.
Absolutely, upfront.
Yeah.
Get those expectations set. And this handbook really stresses the importance of knowing the difference between player knowledge and character knowledge.
Yeah.
Because blurring those lines can lead to metagaming.
Yeah, metagame. It's like that
little gremlin.
Yeah, the little gremlin that whispers in your ear and it's like, hey, there's a trap up ahead.
Right.
Even though your character has no reason to know that.
Exactly. And it's like watching a movie and suddenly a character winks at the camera.
Right.
It just pulls you right out of the story.
Yeah. You're like, wait a minute. Right.
That's not how this works.
Right. And the handbook gives some pretty good strategies for how to handle that.
Okay.
One is to, gently guide players back into their character's perspective. Mm-hmm. So if someone's making a decision that, seems out of line with their character's knowledge,
right,
you can ask them, okay, well, what does your character actually know?
Right.
What would motivate them to do that?
Right.
It's a little nudge to get back into that immersive headspace.
Right. And sometimes you can even use those metagaming tendencies to your advantage as the DM.
Absolutely.
Like if the players are getting a little too confident,
right,
maybe throw in a twist they weren't expecting.
Right, exactly. Keep them on their toes.
Yeah, and just remind them that they don't have the script.
Yeah, they're not omniscient.
Exactly.
So it's really about maintaining that balance between player agency and the integrity of that game world.
Right.
We want players to feel empowered to make choices.
Yeah, but those choices should be coming from their character.
Right.
Not from their, outside knowledge.
Right. And speaking of choices, let's talk about those moments when we roll the dice.
Yes. The moment of truth.
Yeah.
The dice rolls.
So, we talked about visibility and transparency.
Right.
But what about when a player rolls a critical failure or a critical success for that matter?
Right.
Do we allow re-rolls?
That's a good question.
Do we let fate take its course?
Yeah, are we fudging the dice?
Yeah, are we fudging the dice? And the handbook actually talks about this.
Oh, wow.
A little bit.
Okay.
And they're very cautious about it.
Okay.
And they say, it's a tool that should be used sparingly, if at all.
Okay.
And only to enhance the storytelling.
Gotcha.
Never to manipulate the game in anyone's favor.
I see. So not to play favorites or railroad the players.
Right. It's not about forcing a particular outcome.
Okay.
It's more about smoothing out those rough edges.
The bumps in the road.
Yeah, that can disrupt the flow of the story.
Right. So if a critical hit early on would eliminate a character, you might kind of adjust that a little bit.
Right.
Just to prevent an anticlimactic ending.
Yeah.
Or if you've got, a series of unlucky rolls.
Right.
That's really hindering the party's progress.
Yeah.
You might tweak things a little bit just to give them a boost.
Right. But again, it's all about
subtlety.
Subtlety, yeah.
And consistency.
Yeah.
You don't want to draw attention to it.
Right. You don't want to make it obvious.
Exactly.
And this whole discussion about dice reminds me of something I read recently.
Oh, yeah?
About the psychology of randomness.
Okay.
And apparently we humans really don't like randomness.
Really?
Yeah. We crave patterns.
Interesting.
And predictability.
Huh.
So when we're faced with something truly random,
right,
like a dice roll,
right,
it can be kind of unsettling.
So that's why we have all the rituals.
Yeah, we try to impose our own sense of order on it, blowing on the dice or using a lucky dice tower.
Yeah, those little things we do.
Yeah, it's we're trying to appease the dice gods.
The dice gods.
Look, ultimately, we have to accept that chance plays a role.
Yeah.
Both in D&D and in life.
That's very true.
And speaking of those, unexpected twists and turns, let's talk about what happens when those dice rolls lead to,
oh boy,
shall we say, some spirited debates about the rules.
Right.
So, does your group like to pause the game, consult the rule book?
Right.
Or do you kind of empower the dungeon master to make a ruling on the fly?
Yeah, I think that's where establishing those clear expectations up front is so important.
Right.
The handbook suggests that groups decide on a process for handling disagreements. So whether that's, a democratic vote, a DM's ruling,
right,
or, maybe there's a designated rules arbiter.
The rules lawyer. The important thing is that everyone feels heard.
Yeah.
And that the process is transparent.
Absolutely, because nobody wants to feel like the rules are being arbitrarily enforced.
Or that their perspective isn't valued.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes the best solution is just to agree to disagree.
Absolutely.
And table the discussion for later.
Especially if it's derailing the game.
Right.
Remember the goal is to have fun and tell a story together.
Right.
It's not to get bogged down in these legalistic arguments.
Yeah, we're not trying to write a legal brief here. We're trying to have an adventure.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We talked about respect, distractions, food, character names, handling those missing players, multiple characters.
We talked about dice.
Yeah, all that juicy stuff.
All the good stuff.
And, it seems like all of these elements really contribute to this larger goal of creating this shared space where everybody feels comfortable, engaged, respected.
It's about setting the stage for that collaborative storytelling experience.
Yeah, it's like we're building a magnificent castle together.
I love that.
Brick by brick, rule by rule.
Beautiful.
And speaking of building, let's talk about those heart-pounding moments that often form like the core of a D&D adventure. Those combat rounds.
Ah, yes. Combat, the adrenaline is pumping.
Yeah, you're facing down like a fearsome beast. The dice are rolling. And suddenly it's your turn to act. But you haven't even decided what you want to do.
Oh, no. The pressure is on.
The pressure is on.
And that's where being prepared really comes into play.
Right. It's not just about knowing your character's abilities. It's about like thinking ahead. Anticipating your turn.
Having a plan.
Having a plan. It's funny. I actually use that same principle.
In my daily life.
Really?
Yeah. So like before an important meeting, I'll try to anticipate like what questions might come up or what challenges I might face. So I'm not like caught off guard.
That's so smart.
Yeah. It's like prepping my character sheet for a real life encounter.
I love that that's a great example of how these D&D principles translate into real world skills. Decision-making under pressure. Strategic thinking. Being adaptable.
Yeah, we're not just playing D&D. We're training for real-life boss battles.
We are.
So, when it comes to those combat rounds, the handbook has a suggestion. And it's a very simple suggestion, but I think it's very effective.
What is it?
If a player is taking too long to decide what to do, you assume that their character delays their turn.
Oh, interesting.
So, of course, a little flexibility is warranted.
Especially for new players.
Yeah, especially for new players. You don't want to be too harsh.
It's all about finding that balance between keeping a brisk pace and, giving players space to think.
To make those decisions.
And speaking of information, one of the trickiest aspects of combat, and I think of D&D in general, is like, how do you handle information that the characters might not know? This is where metagaming can really rear its ugly head again.
It creeps back in.
Yeah. So, the handbook really stresses the importance of clear communication and transparency when it comes to revealing information. So, for example, if a player wants to search for a trap, the DM might roll secretly, regardless of what the player actually rolled, to determine whether or not their character finds the trap. And that keeps the players guessing. And it prevents them from like metagaming based on the DM's reactions. So it's like, you're rolling the dice, but it's more for like the drama of the moment than it is for the actual mechanics.
Interesting. So it allows the DM to control the flow of information a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it creates a more authentic sense of discovery and challenge
for the players.
So what are some other ways that we can kind of like avoid metagaming during those like tense combat encounters? Because I imagine things can get pretty heated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When you're fighting for your character's life.
The stakes are high. And I think it's so important to remind players to focus on their characters, their perspective, and their motivations.
So, for example, if a player knows from out-of-game knowledge that a particular monster is vulnerable to fire, they shouldn't just use that information unless their character has some reason to know that.
Because it wouldn't make sense for, a character who's never encountered this creature before to suddenly know its weakness.
It's like in a movie when a character suddenly develops a new skill just when the plot demands it.
When they need it.
It breaks that suspension of disbelief.
It does.
And to further prevent that metagaming, I think, as a DM, you can create encounters that really challenge those assumptions and force the players to like think creatively within their character's limitations.
So it's not just about, having all the answers. It's about discovering those answers.
And those moments of like genuine discovery, I think, are the most rewarding.
Absolutely.
For both players and DM.
They're the stories we tell later. Those are the memories we make.
Exactly. And those stories and those shared experiences are ultimately what D&D is all about.
Absolutely.
It's about creating a world together.
exploring its mysteries and like forging these bonds of friendship and camaraderie along the way.
Beautifully said. I love that. And those bonds are strengthened when we have these clear expectations. This open communication and a shared respect for the game and for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kind of like delve deeper into these D&D table rules, remember that they're not just about playing a game.
Right.
They're about creating this positive and enriching experience.
Absolutely.
For everyone involved.
It's about building something special together.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place to leave it for now.
Okay.
So we'll be back after a short break to wrap up this deep dive into D&D table rules.
Okay, so we are back and ready to wrap up this deep dive into D&D table rules.
It's amazing how much ground we've covered.
I know, right?
From like respecting each other's time and minimizing those distractions to navigating those like heated rules debates. Yeah, and like trying to avoid that metagaming temptation.
Oh, yeah. Always a challenge.
Always a challenge.
But I think that the main takeaway for me is that all of these guidelines, these rules that we've been talking about, they're not just arbitrary.
Yeah.
They're really tools for making the game better.
Yeah. It's like we're building this toolkit for collaborative storytelling.
I love that, a toolkit.
And each rule, each guideline is like another tool that helps us create something more immersive, more engaging.
More fun.
Yeah, more fun.
And, just like a skilled artisan.
Yeah.
You have to choose the right tool for the job.
Right.
And I think it's the same with these table rules. We have to choose the ones that fit our group and our goals.
Yeah. So thinking about that, what are some things that really stood out to you?
So many things.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest one is communication.
Communication, yeah.
Just being open and honest.
Yeah.
At the very beginning.
Right.
About what we expect. Whether it's how we handle character names or disagreements about the rules, it just prevents so many headaches down the road.
Yeah, it's like we're all signing this like social contract.
Exactly. Yeah. We're agreeing on these ground rules to make sure everyone feels good.
Yeah, comfortable and heard.
Exactly. And respected.
Respected. And I think that sense of respect is so fundamental to like
it is
the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not just about the rules themselves.
Right.
It's about how we treat each other.
Right. And you know what's funny?
That's that.
I've noticed that when you have that foundation of respect and communication in place, the rules almost become secondary.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like the group just develops this natural rhythm, this shared understanding of how to navigate the challenges and make decisions together.
It's like a dance.
Yeah.
Everyone's moving in sync.
And at the end of the day, isn't that what makes for a truly memorable experience?
Oh, absolutely.
Those moments of shared laughter? Those epic victories.
Right.
And even those epic fails.
Like the stories we tell.
The stories, and those failures often become like the most legendary stories.
They do. They're
the ones you tell over and over again.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive
into
D&D table rules, remember, dear listeners, these rules aren't just about a game.
Right.
They're about so much more than that.
They are.
They're about fostering connections, building trust, and creating experiences that will stay with you long after the dice have stopped rolling.
Beautiful.
And on that note, we'd love to hear from you. So if you have any funny or insightful table rule stories of your own,
share them.
Share them with us on social media.
We want to hear them.
And hey, maybe we'll feature them in a future deep dive.
That's a great idea.
So until next time.
Yes.
Happy gaming, everyone.
Happy gaming.
And may your adventures be filled,
with laughter, camaraderie,
and unforgettable memories.
And we will see you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating worlds
of knowledge and imagination.
Until then, farewell.